Welcome back, everybody, to the A Little Less Fear podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lino Martinez, and I'm so happy to introduce our guest today. Her name is Maggie Daniels. She's the author of the poetry book called Swimming, that's available at Barnes & Noble, and it's also available in audio and all music streaming services. Oh, hell yeah, can we get a hell yeah now? She uses poetry and screenplays as a means of therapy to cope with PTSD. She says that the response to both of her films and poetry have been magical. Hell yeah. Welcome, Maggie Daniels.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. So tell us, how did your writing, tell us about your passion.
I've always been a poet. I learned how to read through poetry with Silverstein stories, from Where a Sidewalk Ends to A Light On in the Attic. And I grew up with dyslexia, so learning to read was kind of a very difficult task for me. And it was like my first hurdle as a kid to get over. And poetry really opened understanding of language to me.
Hey, Maggie, for people that don't know what dyslexia is, how can we explain
dyslexia, yeah, it's
Yeah.
a learning, it's categorized as a learning disability, but I consider it just a learning difference. Every case is different. It's just how my brain understands information and processes information. I just learn differently. Like, I don't ever fit into the
cookie cutter?
the cookie cutter system of learning.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think it's fucked up how they call it dyslexia. Because how you gonna be like, oh, y'all can't spell or read very well? Well, here's this fucking word with a
Right.
silent letter and a X. Like,
Right.
when do we use a letter X? Like, come on, dyslexia, like, calm down. But yeah, that word's always bothered me as someone that
Yeah.
it's hard to spell. So yeah.
That's so true.
But poetry has always been a great outlet for me. I've always written poetry since I was a little kid. I used to have my mom write stuff down because I couldn't spell it. So she would just type it out for me. And my first poem was published in a magazine when I was in 4th grade. We used to, for a tradition, we would go get our Christmas trees at Christmas Tree Farm in North Carolina. And I wrote about that. And the farmer published it in their little monthly magazine. So
that's
startling. Publication was 4th grade. Yeah, it was pretty cool. And my mom always was very supportive of my poetry. It was kind of like the only thing she cheered me on in. And I learned later, when I was going through her things after she died, that she used to write quite a bit of poetry. And so I guess we always had that similarity, and that's why she really was happy that I flourished in it. But yeah, and speaking of my mother, writing poetry definitely helped myself process what grief is, because when you lose someone suddenly, or in any scenario, there's just lack of words to what you physically and mentally feel like all I was craving was like, what the fuck is happening to me?
Yeah.
And I feel like swimming for me was like waving a white flag, like giving in to my emotions. So I kind of just leaned in, and they just kind of all flooded out. And then I went through a bunch of old boxes and found old poems from 8th grade through high school, and threw some of those in. And it was like word vomit. I just kept writing. I've written every day. I just kind of went through a writer block slump during the Trump presidency. I think a lot of creatives were blocked during that time.
Yeah.
Just because of the just aggressive negativity that was just surrounding everyone's space during that time.
Totally.
But once I got through that, it was like Watergate open, just poured out. And I'm going to share some of those examples of that today.
Yeah, thank you.
The week my mom died was my 26th birthday, the day she was found. That was pretty shitty. She was 62 and I was 26. I think numbers are weird. I don't know.
Wow, that's That's really something, actually. Well, the numbers are just flipped around. Wow.
Yeah. I joke with my friends that I'm going to be a bitch and die on her birthday, but just to make things even. But yeah, the week she died, I just drove home and stayed at my in-laws to get to help my aunt like sign whatever she needed. I just felt like I needed to physically be in North Carolina to feel closer to my mom at the time. Like I couldn't be all the way across the country with that information. So I went home and I just started writing at my in-laws house. I would just sit on, they had a really awesome hammock that was really comfortable. They have two ponds on their property, and one of the ponds had a hammock set up, and I would just go and sit in that hammock and just be sad. And I cried a lot, and I just
Did you have
wrote.
chapters in your book that are dedicated to this period, this time in your life, or
I
and
don't
even
really
to like the times when you were younger?
Yeah, I don't really do chapters in my style of poetry. It's kind of just like you can Russian roulette my book. You can just open to any page and start from there.
That's great.
Um, it's all over the place.
Uh-huh.
But if you read it in order from page one all the way through, it gradually builds and becomes more and more personable and more, I would say, darker inner dialogue and
Uh-huh.
more honest to trauma and grief and everything. It's like if you make it through the first like 20-30 pages, it's like, all right, now buckle up, we're gonna really rip off the band-aid type thing.
Wow.
And the week my mom died, the only word that I could describe or that made any sense to me on how I felt was the word empty. And so I remember sitting on the hammock and just thinking about how I just felt empty. And I didn't know any other description for that. And that's how I got to this poem I'm about to read. And it's called Empty.
Let's do it. Empty.
I can't comprehend much lately. Seems I'm walking into brick walls, blindly unaware of the bruises from the blows, repetitively empty until I'm no skin, just bones.
Oh, it's
And
powerful.
that to me, I just felt like um, it didn't matter where I looked or where I turned to, I was always going to get hit with the reality of where I was, of what I was going through. And I literally felt like a shell of a person. I felt like I was just a skeleton observing things happening around me.
Yeah, like no matter where you turn, there's going to be a wall right in front of your face.
Yeah. Yeah. It was shitty. It was shitty. Um, and the further I got into that depression and sadness of loss and everything, um, the the emptiness feeling, it filled with pressure,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt like I had to like get it out, and the only way I could get it out is I just wanted to yell out for my mom. Like she couldn't, like she exists, like she has to like answer back. Like I just had, like as a kid when I was scared, I would like just yell out for my mom, like that, like you wake up in the middle of the night from a bad dream, you call
Right.
out for mom, all that jazz. And I just got this desire to just yell. So one night I after my in-laws like went to church or something, they live in the woods, so this like generally in the middle of nowhere. So I walked in the middle of their property and just like yelled
And
on
were
the
you able to
on
hear
the
like the
ground.
echo, the whole
Yeah, it felt like that pressure
was being
um
released?
was being at least some way um relieved in the moment.
Mm.
Not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily gone, but relieved.
Okay.
And after that, I thought I'd feel better, but I went from like I went from like empty to hollow. Like the pressure calmed a little bit, but the reality kept sinking in.
And what
And
happened when you started to feel hollow?
I processed it through with another poem. and I'm going to read that right now.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Hollow. I'd rip my own heart out just to have you here now. I'd climb to the highest building, scream out your name until my lungs collapsed, if it meant you'd answer back. I'd spend every second holding your hand if it would have taken away your pain. I'd drown myself in the deepest depths if it brought breath back into you. Every day I rip my guts out onto a page. Poetry can't fix how I'm feeling these days. Mom, I'm at a loss for words. Where my insides once were, there's only holes. Since Dad called and said you were gone. My
What does it
dad
feel
is
like
the
now
one
for you
that
to write?
called me.
What's that?
Huh?
Oh, your father's the one that told you?
Yeah, he's the one that called me when my mom was found. But I just felt like I needed to just, like, I needed her to answer back. And the reality of her not being able to answer back just kept, like, hitting me.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized what I was going. I was like, I got hit with the realization of being like, oh shit, this is what grief is. Like, what the fuck? And
Yeah.
I just felt trapped in it. Like, it was, because it's forever. Like, until you find out what death is, like, it's forever.
Right.
And so I felt the need to, like, interpret exactly what grief was to me. And this next poem is called Grief.
It's called Grief? Okay.
Yes. Every few days, there's a knife in my chest whenever I start to realize I'll never see you again.
Oof.
So, yeah, and I feel like until you experience it, you really don't know. It's like any description for what, like, sharp pain is, or it's just crippling. It really is, it in every sense of the word. And I like to say that writing this down immediately was like, oh, I feel so much better.
Right.
But not really. And honestly, I still work on it, like, often. But what feels good is that after writing this down and sharing it with other people, is it's brought comfort to other people experiencing the same things. And being like, oh yeah, that's what I'm feeling, like putting words to what the fuck is going on.
Yeah. Being able to be those words for other people. That's really awesome.
Yeah. And that feels pretty good. And people approach me all the time, like, oh my gosh, your poems, like, help me so much. And I'm like, I have this selfish thing. I'm like, oh, that's really awesome. I hope it works for me. Like,
yeah.
you know what I mean?
It is.
Like,
It is. You're not fully aware of it, but I feel it's working for you. I can see your smile lighting up. So there's definitely some light in there.
Yeah. I always I like to call that the bright side. I always end up back on the bright side. And that's one of my favorite poems in the book, is Bright Side. I'm about to pull it up for you. Just, here it is. I always tell people don't worry about me because I always end up on the bright side. I don't know how I get there, but probably drugs. Drugs help. Definitely a lot of psychedelics and uppers. This one's called Bright Side. Bright Side. Sometimes I lie to myself and say you really mean it. I sabotage my own health in the name of being honest. I daydream away the things that make me afraid. Some nights I even dig my own grave. But oddly enough, when I've run out of luck, I'm always the one still looking up.
Yeah. I love that one.
Yeah, it's all over the board. It's a lot of my inner dialogue, and I promise the whole book isn't just like, I miss my mom. But it's the core of the book. I definitely dedicate the whole book to my mother.
Beautiful.
There's romance in it, relationship, inner confidence, outer confidence, anxiety, what is existing question, am I in charge of this ride, or am I, just hitching one?
Was your mother a writer as well?
Yes, my mom wrote poetry. She never published it, but she wrote poems, and she went to film school for photography. And she was a photography teacher at the University of Pembroke in North Carolina. And then she worked at her own photography business for several years. just mostly a stay-at-home mom, single mom. My parents separated when I was 4. It was really traumatic because they didn't really communicate that very well.
Hmm.
Like my mom sent us to stay, like to go visit my aunt and uncle, or well, my aunt and uncles. And so we just went like on like a first like overnight without my parents type thing. And then I came home and my dad was gone. So when I was a kid, I couldn't sleep at other people's houses. I'd wake up at 2, 3 in the morning crying in a panic, thinking I was gonna like go home and my mom wasn't there anymore.
Yeah.
Like, so that was like stage 1 of abandonment issues. Fun,
And
but
how many years ago, how long has it been since your mother passed?
2019. So
2019.
still pretty
Super
fresh.
duper recent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel her?
Yeah, all the time. All the time.
Are
The
they
night
like
I got her
feels? What about
ashes.
senses? You know, I've heard people be like, "Oh, I smell my kid," or "I smell my brother."
Well, I can't really smell because
Oh,
of
okay.
poor decision making.
Uh-huh.
But no, I feel her a lot. When the night I got her ashes was pretty powerful. Um, I was reading to myself like on my phone that night. I was staying at my in-laws and I was reading on my phone like if you find a penny, someone's that passed is like trying to communicate with you or something. I never heard of that. And
Yeah.
it's like apparently it's like a very common thing in like the South and stuff. Find a penny or a dime or something. And in my mind, I didn't say it out loud, but in my mind, I was like, oh, guess mom didn't get the memo because I was like, I don't see a penny.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then I just went to bed. In the middle of the night, I heard something like hit the bedside table and it woke me up. And I all of a sudden got this overwhelming sense of like calm and like safe, like
Wow.
security. And I can only describe it as like when I like get a bad dream and I go crawl in bed with my mom and I'd have to have like my foot or elbow or something like touching her.
Yeah.
And if I was touching my mom, I felt like I was invincible, like nothing could hurt me. And that's like the overwhelming feeling I got that night. And then I just went back to bed because like I felt safe. And I woke up the next morning and right next to my mom's ashes was a penny heads
What?
up. And I immediately asked my mother-in-law, like, hey, did you come in my room like this morning or anything or last night? And she was like, no, like blah, blah, blah. When I went to bed, there was nothing on that nightstand. And I was thinking, I was like, oh, the sound I heard last night kind of sounded like a coin dropping on the bedside table. And it got weirder because the date on the penny, I called my aunt and I was like, hey, what's the significance to 1964? And she just like got emotional. And that was the year she was born.
Wow.
Because that night, so my aunt was in charge of like the trust and everything and breaking down the will and all that jazz. And my dad was like helping my brother out, like figure out things and stuff. And one was saying one thing of like, this is how this goes. And another one was explaining it differently. And that night I was just like talking like, I don't really understand what's going on. And I don't know who to listen to on like what's correct. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And like no spiteful intentions or anything. I just was confused. And their birth years are slightly different. My dad was born in 63 and my aunt was born in 64. And I feel like my mom left me that penny with her birth year, like, listen to your aunt. Like,
That makes sense.
yeah. And yeah, so I don't know. I felt a little weird ever since then because it's just something I can't explain, like how that penny got there
Yeah.
and that it's the birth year of my aunt when I was like feeling kind of like, I don't know whose advice to listen to.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, it was weird. So,
Wow. It's as if she's like your guardian angel chilling with you and like helping you make decisions.
yeah, I definitely feel that way. Because I met with, I did like my first like spiritual whatever like reading with
Hmm.
like someone with like a medium or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm a little skeptic on that. Like the night I got my mom's ashes, that same night I found the penny, I also told my mom, like, if you still exist somewhere and someone can communicate that with me, they're gonna have to say blank, blank, blank. Like they're gonna have to repeat what I tell you tonight in private for me to be like, that's my mom communicating. And I'll be goddamn. This woman came to my house and I was fully prepared to talk shit when she left. Like I was totally skeptic. And she had these crystals and she had some candles and she put on some music. And it really felt like I was getting like at first like acupuncture or something, like very professional, very zen. And the first fucking thing that comes out of that girl's mouth is what I told my mom in private when I got her ashes. And I just started bawling like Kim Kardashian, ugly crying, could not, but like snot coming down, like hyperventilating, like I was a wreck. And since then, like you couldn't tell me my mom's not with me.
Oh, she's with you.
Yeah, like 100%. So
wow.
I don't know where that
That's
falls,
an incredible,
like spiritually or
beautiful
religiously, but
story.
like,
That's such an uplifting story. It's such an uplifting story. Thanks so much for sharing this.
thanks. Yeah.
It's really beautiful. So now you've got like a super duper special connection with your mother, that a connection you never thought you would have with her until now.
Yeah, and it feels, I don't know, it just feels like I, in a sense, have my mom back because my mom's mental health really put a strain on our relationship. Just the way she would just negatively react to things, and her anger issues and stuff like that. But I feel like where she is now, or the energy she is now, like separated from her body, her spirit has finally like let go
Of all those
of the
pains.
like judgments that society and trauma puts in and ruins your perspective on things. Like all the voices that were negative that were planted in her head, it's just her voice now. And my mom was the nicest, most creative, my first friend. Like I love my mother so much. Who she was truly as a person, 1 in a million. Like love her to the moon and back. But she just never got a grip on understanding her trauma and like facing it full on. So it kind of ran her life. So yeah, I feel like my mother's at peace. So
I feel it. I feel it for sure. Thanks so much for sharing. What an incredible journey this has been for you.
Yeah, it feels good. I do wish I could share it. Like I would kill to call her. Not having that, that two-way communication directly.
The human communication.
Yeah, like this realm, you know what I mean?
Yeah, this dimension.
Like spiritually, I do feel her, but oh man, I miss her a lot, and she wasn't here to see me do my book or my film or anything, and she's the only person I want to share any of it with, so it's hard. It's hard.
Thanks so much for being open and real here on this podcast. It's definitely, it's comforting to speak to somebody that's willing to open up and share all their love and all their light the way you just did. Thank you so much.
Yeah, anytime. What else am I doing?
So what's the biggest thing, your biggest takeaway from everything, from your incredible book to connecting with your mother on the other side, to the pain that you've gone through, all your other traumas, and then having a screenplay coming up? Like, how does all of this feel all together? What's like one big word that you can use to summarize, if you could?
Oh man,
Or just
fulfilling.
feeling? Yeah.
Fulfilling. Like I don't feel empty. I don't feel hollow anymore. I feel like I know what my purpose is, and I know what I want to spend my time like in my human. I know what I want to do with my human experience. Yeah.
Before we go, tell us your purpose.
My purpose is to tell stories, to create, to make art, to express myself, and to help others do the same.
And that's what you're doing. And you've inspired me. Maggie Daniels, everybody, on A Little Less Fear podcast. Don't forget to get her book. It's also on audio in all music streaming services. Oh, by the way, did you do your own audio?
I recorded at Plan 9 Studios with Mike Henderson, and on the music is music composer Corey Campbell and Jenna Desmond out of South Carolina, and they are amazing. Check them out. They have a band called Babe Club.
Baby Club?
Babe Club, yeah.
Oh,
And
I love that.
they are some cool babes, man. I love them so much. They're
Yeah, I want to go to the
creative.
Babe Club.
They
All
are
right,
killing it.
Maggie
They got really
Daniels.
cool music videos.
Yeah,
They're a vibe. They're a vibe.
I will
Yeah.
check them out. Thanks so much for sending us that vibe recommendation. I appreciate it. MaggieLogic.com and on Barnes and Noble as well. Thanks so much,
Yeah.
Maggie.
Thank you.
Peace out. Thank you.